society at large, they look down on people who are in prison. So people do things. They're not evil people, they're evil deeds. And I think we need to separate the person from their deeds, work with them, and now put them back together.
How are you doing, Rabbi? Thank you so much for being in between the lines with us today. I'm really excited to speak to you because I don't usually see rabbis in these areas and in this system. So I'm just so curious what your story is and how you got here.
First, I'm very excited to be here as well. Thank you. In 2003, I was contacted by this facility, this prison, Calipatria, and they asked me to apply. The previous rabbi had moved on. And long story short, 21 years later, I'm still here. Prison was never I'd never see myself having even going to a prison, let alone working in one. And it wasn't something I wasn't looking forward to it, didn't even know much about it. There was nothing in my world, my growing up in an insular Jewish community, that included prisons. And there was that allure, there was that, wow, prison. And once I started coming as a volunteer, before I started in 2003, that went away. One thing I noticed and I realized about myself was I just like to help people. It doesn't matter to me in what setting. Certainly, though, working here now in the past 21 years has shifted my thought process a little bit more in that it's not just helping people. I like helping people who society have given up on. And so one of the things I try to do is to tell that story, that journey that I'm going on with the people I'm going on with and the people I'm trying to help in whatever way I can.
And speaking of your journey that we'll get to now, were you born into your religion?
So I was born into a Jewish family, Hasidic Jewish family. Ultra-Orthodox is the label they throw on us. And I grew up that way, still that way, and very happy to be that way.
Yes, and so now with your journey here in prison, how has it changed you? What have you learned from being a rabbi here?
It's a good question. I've learned about myself, probably more so than about the world at large. First of all, there's the obvious. There are a lot of religions that I'd never heard of. You hear of the Jewish, Catholic, Protestant, the big ones, the Islam, and so on. The big ones you hear about. Then you start working in a prison, you hear about all these other religions and what they stand for, who worships them and so on. And to me, it's an interesting dynamic how you have an ultra-Orthodox rabbi who's working with whatever religion, whatever population, cultural, religious, or anything in between, and we're working to help them because our job is to help people become better people. Mm-hmm. And obviously, as a rabbi, that's via religion because that's what I know best. And what have I learned in the last 21 years is that I have a lot more to learn about people, about who they are, why they are the way they are, and the things that we do.
What is something that you've seen that everybody has in common when it comes to them being here?
I think, so to go back a step, society at large, mostly from what I hear, from what I experience, they look down on people who are in prison. Sometimes that's rightfully so. People perpetrate crime, there's a victim, and so on. I think if we change that outlook, change that viewpoint to why are people doing this? We can give all the excuses, gangs and didn't have parents, didn't have the love and all that. Those are all excuses because there are people who did have the love and didn't have gangs who still end up in prison. But I think one thing to remember is everybody's a diamond. Some are more in the rough than others. And what we need to do as a society and as working in a prison, but society at large is instead of throwing away these stones, let's polish them. let's reveal that diamond within, and now we have something of beauty. Now are you okay with that? So people do things. They're not evil people, they're evil deeds. And I think we need to separate the person from their deeds, work with them, and now put them back together.
Yes. And what are some things that you do, not you do, but your program, that polishes these stones?
The first thing is we humanize them. You're a human being. You just need, the way I look at it personally is, they're a missile. They're a missile without a guidance system. And so if you lob a missile and you can't guide it, it's just going to land anywhere. So the energy's there, the power's there, everything's there, but the guidance. If we add just that little chip, that little guidance system, we take the same missile, but now we can work with the outcome of where it's going. So I try to see myself as a guide. That guidance system. Sometimes I'm successful, and sometimes I'm not. At least I don't feel that way. But that's what I'm trying to do. How can I be the guide for you?
That's beautiful. So what is a day in the life with you, Rabbi?
The beautiful thing about work in a prison is consistently inconsistent. So there are general things that we do, but we can show up at prison and, no, today you're going to be doing this, because that's what, I don't like to use the word circumstance, but that's what the circumstance calls for. But generally speaking, we have at least, so at Calipatria, we have 4 main yards and then a minimum yard. And we like to be on each of the yards at least one time a week. And we have scheduled religious services. All the chaplains do. We have some volunteers also. And for those who don't have a chaplain, we will supervise them having a service. So there are services. We also do a lot of counseling. Most of what we do is counseling, and that not counseling in the conventional sense of mental health, but of the religious counseling. And just like in mental health, a lot of that's listening, is being present in that moment with this person and let that person give over what they need, and now we can kind of guide them into whatever it is that they need to the best of our abilities. Another thing we do is, and this is we never know, is a family will call or somebody will call and say that this individual, this incarcerated person's mother died, child, whoever it may be. And we have to not only deliver that news, but then we have to follow up by being there, being present, guiding, and so on with them.
Yeah, that's really important. I just recently saw a TED Talks about that it's not necessarily the traumatic incident that happens, but it's how the child or the person is treated right after that, in order for them to ease into the trauma and to be able to handle it. For example, if a kid comes and he gets abused in some sort of way, and the mom and dad are there to see him in shock and say, what's wrong, hold him, and also be like, the dad's a doctor, let's say, and the dad's like, let's go take you to the office, make sure you're okay. The mom is holding them, and they're like kind of guiding him through this healing process. They're not as traumatized as if you go to your parents and you're like, Mom, Dad, and they're like, just go to your room. That's what happens when you go out and play with those kids, and you don't give them the chance to kind of like put those feelings anywhere. So that just reminded me that you saying that you're able to, like, right after with the job of the death, or to guide them and heal them through those emotions.
And sometimes everybody grieves differently, obviously. But there are commonalities, if you will, with death and how people react to it. And very often over here, they react differently. Not because they want to, excuse me, because they feel like they have to. Maybe they're macho, maybe there's other people around, they don't want to cry. And we try to create an environment where they're alone. It's not always possible. And so we'll try and coax them, not into crying. It's not about crying, it's about grieving. We want to make sure, like you just said, that you're grieving in whatever way that is correctly, so that you're able to move on. Put one foot in front of the other.
Right, and not hold those emotions in, and they can manifest into things that maybe
Correct.
aren't,
Not healthy.
not nice and healthy. So I'm sure you've met a lot of people, a lot of people look up to you. You've been able for 21 years, maybe known one person for 21 years here, right? Is that
No,
have you like been with? Have you known one of the inmates here for 21 years?
No, there's...
They're in and out.
Most of our population have... They come and they go, and sometimes they come back. I can't think of anybody who was here when I started 21 years ago, but certainly within, people have been here for 15 or a number of years.
What's the biggest change that you've seen in this system since when you first got here till now?
As a system as a whole, we're now going, so let me, before I talk about the present, let me go back. The previous warden we had he was here for 10 years, which was it's an anomaly for a warden to be here for that long. And I asked him, I said, why is it you're still here, 10 years? And he said, I had a vision, and I want to see that vision through. And he did start to change the environment. This prison, it's not well known. When you hear prison, San Quentin, and places like that, not usually Calipatria. Yet, Calipatria is probably one of the highest active prisons, let's call it. Violence and fights and so on. And he wanted to change that. And so he worked on that very hard, and the tide was shifting. The problem is then others come in and people leave and so on. Now, today, in the present, there's now what we call a California model. It's loosely based off the Norway model, but it's called the California model. And it's essentially the same ideas the warden was trying to direct the prison toward, which is normalize. It's rehabilitate. It's you are human. Let's work with you, whatever that may be, to try and work so that society can be happy with you going back out. It's not just that revolving door. You're here, now you're out, you're coming back. It's not that you're here, you're going out, and you're continuing down this life of crime. It's, I was here because I needed that guidance system. I needed that proverbial slap in the face, and now I get it. Now I'm changing, now I'm going out, and I'm a productive member of society like the best person I could be.
And how important to you is the belief in God or a higher power for these inmates to not only change, but to feel peace while they're in here, and to also learn from that relationship with God, Jesus, higher power?
So that's a multifaceted question to me, the way I see it. There is, on the one hand, you have the higher power, we call God, and on the other hand, you touched upon something about, you didn't ask that question, but I'm getting about, for example, life without parole, LWOP inmates, what kind of hope do they have? And on the one hand, you have to have a higher sense of self, really, whatever you call that. So conventionally, we call that God. A lot of people, I don't believe in God, but when you actually sit and speak with them, they believe in that concept, they just don't call it God. You need to have that because there's, first of all, if you want to look at statistics, people who are connected somehow with religion, whether it's a church or a mosque or a synagogue or a native, whatever it may be, any of the religious circles, they're less likely than those who don't have to come back to prison. The recidivism rate for those people who have now anchored themselves to something greater than themselves is a lot lower than people who don't. People ask me here, the inmates, why should I be good? Why should I believe in God or whatever it may be? I have a life without parole. Basically, my life is over. And that's not true. Not conventionally and not spiritually, or not in any way. Here's why. Number one, I know when I started, wise cracker, young guy, still young, but
Still, yeah.
younger. When I started, I remember speaking with a number of inmates who were here for life, and this prison's full of lifers. And they would say to me, I'm never going home. And I would say, never say that. And here's why. Your judge, your jury, your prosecutor, whoever, they're just a messenger of God. They are not people making the decision based on their own abilities. There's a reason for that. And so you need to come to prison for whatever reason. And that's one of the questions I ask is, why are you here? Not what got you here, why are you here? Mm-hmm. And the moment you have completed that mission from God, God will find a way for you to go out. Don't worry about God. And, I got scoffed at a little bit. And within a few years, one of the inmates I was dealing with, he said, I got a date. And so he's like, I know, you told me. So I said to him, I was like, what changed? What happened? And so when you understand that I have a mission here, that's why I'm here, mm-hmm. and I've completed that mission, and you work on that, you'll be sent home. That's how it works. So there is a belief in God. You have to have a belief in God because that's what keeps us also a higher power. If I don't have a higher power, I'm just living for myself, then you're right. I'm existing, I'm not living. And when you exist, nobody else can exist. If I'm sitting on this chair, nobody else can sit in this chair. You can sit on my lap, you can't sit on my chair. Mm-hmm. I take up space, it's all about the me. Mm-hmm. When you live, it's all about the other. Mm-hmm. And so when you visualize and when you live that way it's not only about other, but when you're helping others, you help yourself. And so maybe that's why you're here, to help somebody else. Now you've helped them, God will find a way for you to go out. But when you don't have that in your life, then there is no life. There's no reason for being.
When you have a purpose.
It's important. Yeah, purpose. Yeah, there you go.
That's bigger than yourself.
Correct.
God's will, right? Like it's God's will.
Purpose greater than yourself. It doesn't matter if I'm going out of prison. Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter if I'm going out tomorrow. It doesn't matter if I'm never going out. There's a higher purpose.
Yes.
And that might be you're never going out of prison, but your job while in prison is to help those who are going out. You've changed, now help them change or teach them, guide them.
And I've heard so many amazing stories just today from inmates that have changed and are helping others, and the importance of that with programs like the ones that you have. What is a redemption story, that you've heard or that you've been able to witness on your own, that you could share with us?
Somebody once walked into my office here and asked me, why do I hate you? That was the question. And me being me, I was like, challenge accepted, have a seat. And it was a white supremacist, and I spoke with him that day, and subsequent days, many days and many hours. And he asked me, it was a few years later of me working with him, he asked me if I can write a letter. He's going to the board. This was a life without parole inmate. He's going to the board. And I said, I don't usually write letters to the board. I usually will write what's called a laudatory chrono. Yeah, I know this person, they show up to services, they've been a great leader, maybe. This was different. This was writing a letter to the board or to the governor. I said, but you know what? I know you've changed. Because I've been involved in your change, I'm going to write a letter. And I did. And however long later, a few months later, he came back and he was like, I got a date, I'm going home. And he said, they read your letter. They're like, you have a letter from a rabbi? We know you've changed. And he got a date. So I was that messenger at that moment. His whole change was because, he took the initiative to come in and ask that question, but then I worked with him. And that's not a one-time story. No. There are other stories like that, and there's one currently going on. It doesn't matter to me what your belief system is, who you worship, if anybody, if anything or anybody, or you have a God, you don't have a God, you're agnostic, you're not. All that is irrelevant to me. What's relevant to me is how can I help you be a better version of you? So sometimes that's religion, sometimes that's just in your life. How do I have a better experience? How can I be better at being me? And so that's the way I see that's why God wants me here. That's where I see why God wants me here. So I happen to be Jewish. Doesn't mean that everybody around me has to be Jewish. They don't, because God didn't make them Jewish. So that you have to be the best person you can be. That's how I see my goal, if you will.
And lastly, obviously you've changed a lot of these inmates' lives by being in them. How have they changed your life?
I'm more wise these days because when I first started, I would have something ready to say, ready to go, ready to. I never wanted to be flat-footed. Somebody asked me, and I didn't know. And then I realized, like maybe an epiphany, if you will, that I'm not here for me. I'm here for them. So why am I doing that? And I started to be more of a listener, I took a step back, let them shine. And that has helped me tremendously. And I just want to say one story. I was once asked by an inmate, we were having a session and a group session, and they asked me, you keep saying, do right, do good. How do we know what's the right thing to do? And I said, you got me. I don't know. Let me think about it. And a couple minutes later, I had an epiphany. And I was like, I have an answer. You just have to ask yourself, what would Moses do? You'll know the answer of what you should do. It doesn't mean you're going to do it, but you'll know what the right way and the good way and maybe the opposite way is. If you just ask yourself, what would whoever it may be, what would Moses do? What would your mother do? Whoever it is.
Whoever you hold to the highest
Whoever you hold to the
standard.
highest standard, you'll have your answer.
My gosh,
And so
you're right.
but it's like a movement.
Yes.
It works for anything. And so sometimes I take a step back and I say, what would Moses do? And so that's helped me as well, just to show the reflection. It's helped me become a better version of me. It doesn't mean I'm not perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but in helping others, that has helped me.
Yeah.
What would Moses do?
That's beautiful.
And it also answers any of the questions that come your way or the guidance that you need to give.
Mm-hmm.
It kind of puts it in the right frame of mind and sets you on the right path.
Yes, because just asking that alone, it gives you like a patience, right? Because you have to ask yourself.
Correct.
So you're not answering.
But you also have to be honest.
You have to be honest, and then you're not answering by an impulse or a reaction that could sometimes lead to, a selfish thing. You're doing it because it gives you patience and then groundedness, which is what I feel like you've learned through this.
And you really need that here. Mm-hmm. Working in a prison is not, anybody can do it. Anybody can do anything. But most people won't do it. And maybe there's good reason for that. Yeah, maybe you have to be crazy, which I'm very good at. but it's let's just go with the conventional wisdom is not everybody could do it. You could be a great chaplain in a hospital and not necessarily be a great chaplain in a prison, and vice versa. You could be a great chaplain in a prison and not so great in a hospital. It's completely different. You can't really, you can prepare, you can learn, you can think that, I'm going to ask this person and that person. I get calls all the time from potential chaplains who are looking at it, and I'm very straight with them, I'm very honest, and it's not getting off the boat and saying, I can be a chaplain in a prison. You can't look at it that way, because it isn't. And so it does take a while. I spoke about how when I first started, I was such a way, and that's the reason, really. Aside from just being a young person, it's an inexperience, but experience also taught me how to have that patience and how to actually, when I took that step back, how I can better work with the community that I have, that God put me in. And this is where God put me. Okay, how can I be the best at it? That's the way I look at it.
Well, thank you so much. I'm so excited to see how everything unfolds for you in the future. But I can see the impact and feel the impact that you've made in this community, and it feels like home just having you and like your guidance and leadership. So thank you for your time.